Hello everyone, my name is Nick Ward. I'm a worker here at the Rosenberg Railroad Museum, and I'll be teaching you how to pretty much operate a train. Now, do not try this here in the real world. I'm just showing you how this all would have worked inside of a real locomotive. This did come in fact, come out of a locomotive, out of UP 9403, and pretty much I'll tell you how to run it. So this little handle right here is your reverser. This will control your direction of travel from forwards, indicates that your train would be going forward, and backwards, send the train into reverse. But the reverser also acts like a key. So if I have it here in the neutral position, I can lift it out, and notice I cannot move the throttle at all. So I would have to put the reverser back in, and now I'm able to control my throttle. My throttle practically acts like a gas pedal in your car. Pretty much you have notches 1 through 8, and 8 is practically full speed on the locomotive. So pretty much a locomotive actually has 3 different types of braking. You have the dynamic, the automatic, and the independent. And I'll go over what they all did. Now here is your independent. Your independent would actually control the braking to the locomotives. Now sometimes you can have 3 to 4 locomotives hooked up to a train, and if you were to push this forward, that would apply braking to those locomotives until they will come to a full stop. But if you want to go ahead and release those brakes, you pull this lever on back until your air slowly starts to bleed out. And if you wanted your air to bleed out faster, you'd move this lever over here to the right, called the bailout switch. The bailout switch would then allow your locomotives to bail the air out faster and you start moving. Right here is your automatic brake. Your automatic will actually control the braking to the freight cars. So there are actually quite a few positions here on this automatic brake. Right now, all the way down, it's in release. Minimum application, applying a small amount of brake pressure to the freight cars behind you. And pretty much percentage-wise, you have 50 and full service. After full service, you have suppression. Suppression will pretty much lock those brakes. Handle off. Now, if you had the automatic brake and handle off, that would not apply any amount of braking, and that would just have the lever here in this position. That way it's not in any of the other brake positions. It could be released, but you don't want to have any air flowing through those freight cars while you're this unit being a trailing unit. And in worst case scenario, like for example, you had a car, you have emergency, and that would lock up all the brakes on the locomotives and the freight cars, allowing you to come to a stop quite quickly. And your dynamic brake. Now the dynamic brake is actually attached to the throttle lever. So if you wanted to use a dynamic brake, you'd have to push the throttle up here into setup, and you'd have to leave it there for 10 seconds before you can then begin using the dynamic brake. You would only want to be using the dynamic brake if you're going down a steep hill. This practically acts like a engine brake or a motor brake for your car or semi-truck. But also, again, you have notches 1 through 8, and 8 being the maximum amount of braking power for the dynamic braking. And we'll set it back down here into idle. Now, this device right here is actually your alerter. So, say I'm traveling at full speed, and I'm not touching any of these controls for about 45 seconds at a time. That would then sound an alarm, and the engineer would have to push this lever forward to acknowledge, to let the train know that he's still here, also known as a dead man's pedal. But yeah. And pretty much self-explanatory here on this panel has your horn, your bell, and all the other things that make a train loud and some people don't like. The horn. Now, there's a particular sequence that all engineers have to do at railroad crossings. You have to do a long, a short, and a long across the crossing until that train has come off of the crossing. Over here is the bell. Now, pretty much this should stay up like this, but I think our spring is damaged, so it will not. These 2 blue buttons, and a lot of people read these and say manual sand and lead truck sand. What does that mean? Well, for a fun fact, the surface area between a train's wheel and the rail is no bigger than a dime, so you don't have as much traction on that slippery rail. So what they'll do is they'll apply a small amount of sand in front of that lead axle to allow that train to get traction, because train wheels do not have rubber on them like your typical car. And if you don't want to be holding this button all the time, you can press this on button and that would then apply a small amount of sand in front of the axle. But once you start moving about 2 miles an hour, you then turn off your sand. Right here are your headlight controls. Now, right now they are off, but rule states that when your train is moving, even during the day, you have to have your headlights on at max brightness. Now, if this train was a DPU or displaced power unit, you'd have your headlights down here on dim. That way, that would then let any other people knowing that this train is being used, and well, pretty much not to approach it too much. But let's say if the crew was stopped at a siding and they didn't want to turn off their headlights. Again, they would also have that on dim to allow other crew members to see that there is a crew indeed on this train. And let's say you get off the train, well, you turn your headlights off. This switch down here is just practically for the rear headlights. You have medium or bright, but most of the time you keep them here in dim or off. But yeah. All right.